And thank you for joining Jeff and Elizabeth on an occasion which is obviously very important to both of them. I think it's appropriate that we also make mention of those that have travelled from overseas to be with us tonight. I'm going to read them out because I can't remember them. Elizabeth's cousin Rachel, of course I can remember hers. Rachel's come from Melbourne. A bridesmaid Chloe and her partner Nigel from Sydney. And also with us, who's just miraculously appeared from somewhere in Europe, Sam Luss. Good to see you again, Sam. On the other side, Jeff's brother Andrew and his wife Stephanie and young Alexandra, who you saw performing around the back of the ceremony today. He was a bit better behaved than my grandson, I have to say, but there you are. And Jeff's other brother and groomsman, Richard, who's come from China. And we also have Natalie and Martin and Nikki, who have all travelled from Australia for this occasion. Many of you have also come from far-flung parts of New Zealand, and that's sometimes not that easy either, so that's appreciated. And Elizabeth and Jeff certainly are very grateful for your support, and they don't take their obvious pulling power for granted. We should also note, but perhaps not dwell on, the fact that there are some important members of both families that sadly are no longer with us and not able to witness this celebration. It's on occasions like this, of course, that we spare a thought for and remember them. My job, so I'm told, as father of the bride, is to talk about my daughter and express on behalf of both Ros and I as her parents how proud we are of her. Now, for me this is not actually terribly difficult. So I'll start from the beginning, because what many of you won't know is that Elizabeth was born on December the 23rd. She was almost a Christmas present, yes. She was born on the 23rd of December 1985. Nothing particularly remarkable about that date, other than the fact that it was about 3 months too early. She was actually due, I think, sometime around mid to late March 1986. Having arrived in the afternoon of the 23rd, she played her first trick on us and all the medical staff, because she was tiny. She was about 2 pounds 2 ounces. Tiny, tiny little thing, but in actual fact, she looked quite good. She had good colour and all the characteristics were there that we were very lucky. We had a very, very small, very premature baby, but all the indications were that her chances were pretty good. And sadly, the reality was that wasn't the case, and in actual fact, she was a very, very sick little girl. I remember Christmas Day of that year, and I got a call saying you better get over here pretty quickly to National Women's. We had 3.5-year-old twins at that stage, so life was quite busy, but Ross was still in hospital, and I jumped in the car, and by the time I got over there, somehow, miraculously, they'd filled her up with something, pills, drugs, I don't know, but rattled her around, and she was still going. So we were very, very lucky, and I think it's part of her fighting spirit that she actually got through that period. It was a long, hard road for her to hoe. I think you went from ward to ward in those days, and it took a long time to get to the very end where you were big enough and strong enough to be discharged. I think from memory, Ros came home, I think about 10 days after Elizabeth was born, and we immediately, or Ros immediately started expressing milk, and I used to put that in a little chili bin and go into the office each morning, and there was a routine that started called the Daily National Women's Milk Run. And I used to take this milk up to the ward at National Women's, and Elizabeth in those days was so tiny she was fed through milk through drops through a little eye drop. So it was pretty difficult times, and she made very slow progress, as I said. But eventually, after about 2 months, she worked her way down these series of wards where you got bigger and stronger, and I think the final one was called the Piglet Room or something, and by that stage she was a massive 5 pounds, and we were able to bring her home at that stage. For many months, though, she still had problems. She won't remember them, of course, but I think one of them was a reflux problem, and it was difficult for her to get to sleep. So I'd come home from work, and every night I had to have this little thing strapped to my chest, and I'd walk around the house, and she'd stay there, in fact, until she went to sleep. And in those days we couldn't even afford a dishwasher, I don't think, so I used to do dishes with this tiny little thing hanging off my chest, until she eventually nodded off and then went to sleep. I suppose the saving grace was that she was still at that stage not about to win any prizes from Plunkett for weight gain and growth. I don't know why, but one of my abiding memories, in fact, from those early days was having to take her to a consultant out the back of Auckland Hospital, and I can't remember what it was for. I think it was something to do with these reflux problems that she had. She was only about 2.5. And what I didn't realise is when I got there, this procedure or this consultation involved some sort of an X-ray or a scan. And this poor little mite, I'll never forget the look of sheer terror on her face when she saw this machine and realised that she was going to be sort of gently slid into it. But at the same time, the one thing I remember as clear today as back then was this look of, from this little child that had been so sick, this look of absolute trust as this thing slid into the machine, and she finally let go of my hand and disappeared into this machine to have whatever photograph or X-ray or whatever it was done. And as I say, it's funny how, as a parent, some things you remember forever, and I will never forget the look on her face. So despite a bit of a rough start to life, she did get one lucky early break, and that was she inherited her mother's intelligence. And she was smarter than me by the time she was 3, I have to say. She became an accomplished violinist and played in various school groups and youth orchestras. She's quite a good skier, although I think that's the one thing I can still do I can get from the top to the bottom quicker than she can. It's not through skill, it's because I don't know how to stop usually. We got through to the teenage years, and of course that involved teaching her to drive, and this is another skill that she possessed. I, having taught both her brothers to drive, wasn't particularly looking forward to this particular chore, and I had managed at the time to acquire an old Peugeot 405 manual, and we went down, in fact, to the wharf at Northcote Point, and we strapped ourselves in, and she basically, to my astonishment, basically just drove the car away. And that was almost the extent of our driving lessons. I think we didn't do much more than that. I've always felt, I guess, for Libby that with the start she had, with the challenges she faced through school years and at university, that Lady Luck never seemed to be quite on her side, and I think she's somebody that's really earned everything she's achieved. It was a struggle. She's had no outside help, never seemed to have any lucky breaks. Hopefully the support that Ros and I were able to give her helped in some way. But as I said earlier, when you look at her achievements, how could a father or how could her parents not be proud of the young doctor, the lovely, beautiful young doctor we have in front of us today? Jeff. So, actually, no, I have to admit I ran out of time and I haven't dug up any particular dirt on you, so you're okay. But you're a very lucky man, and I hope you treasure your relationship with Elizabeth. But bear in mind what I've just said, somewhere deep down there is a fighting spirit. So just remember, she's not ever going to be a complete pushover. Speaking about Jeff, and in welcoming you to our family, again, I think we should recognise that here we have an intelligent, talented young man who works for a very highly respected corporate advisory firm in Auckland. Interesting, and I never realised this, but the two of them, I understand, spent some years in the same classes for various subjects at senior college, but clearly were blissfully unaware of each other, so I don't know how that works, but anyway. Those that know Jeff will know he's a talented tennis player, and his skills on the court, in fact, earned him a scholarship where he completed a semester at a university in Orlando. And a bit of trivia, he and his brand new brother-in-law Oliver are the current Queenstown Open doubles tennis champions. I'm very happy to report that Jeff has entered our lives, and since he's entered our lives, his taste and appreciation of red wine has improved immensely. And that may seem trivial or inconsequential, but rest assured it's quite important in our house. I have to say, however, that getting Jeff here today has not been as simple as many of you may think. For many months, Elizabeth faced strong competition for his affections from Elliot. And Elliot is our miniature schnauzer. And he's good looking and talented, spoiled. But Jeff and Elliot developed a deep mutual affection for each other from the moment they met. I think from Elliot's point of view, his affection was no doubt motivated by Jeff's willingness to take him to cafes and ply him with food, and followed by nice walks down Takapuna Beach. And there'd be many times when the three of them, and Elizabeth always sort of tagged along, but there's times when they came back and we almost sort of wondered whether or not it was going to be Elliot that came back with a ring on his paw. Fortunately, happily Elizabeth won out in the end, so it's probably the right choice, Jeff, I think. So here we are today to celebrate the marriage of two smart young people who have a future together in front of them, and the ability, I hope, to make a real contribution to society. As any parent knows, the one thing you wish for your children is, above all else, happiness and good health. But at the same time, we need to remind them that life is not all plain sailing, and that relationships are tested in times of adversity. Not suggesting that you plan for adversity, but having an understanding of it and perhaps planning how you deal with it if and when you encounter it is probably not a bad thing to do. So we all wish Elizabeth and Jeff many long, happy, successful years together in marriage. And on that note, could I ask you to be upstanding and charge your glasses so that we may toast the bride and groom. Bride and groom.
Bride and groom.
Thank you.
Well done.